Miss Emmanuel, how are the streets looking in Phoenixville?
So I think I'm a bad judge because I'm on two major roads, one of which is a state road with priority. So it looks pretty good. Well, I shouldn't say it looks pretty good. People are moving at a decent clip and not sliding. So
Okay.
it's looking okay.
Yeah, we're out checking all the back roads right now.
All right, this has. So is your screen only showing half of the PowerPoint? Or is it just my screen that's doing that?
No, it's all of ours, Sandy.
All right.
Yeah.
This is.
It looks like it's also sharing like your whole screen instead of just the PowerPoint itself.
All right, maybe that's. All right, let me. Screen share. Why is it doing this? All right, I'm going to stop this for just a second. Let me try it again. We're almost to 7. We'll have it figured out by 7 o'clock. Share screen. Why are you doing this?
Since we're all hosts, does somebody else want to share their screen with the PowerPoint?
Give me a second to get back to it. Let me give it another shot. All right, get rid of that.
I'm fine sharing my screen. I just
Let me try it one more time, Ellen. Let me see if I can get to it. All right. Let's go to. Uh-oh. What the heck? All right. I'm not having any luck pulling it up. My apologies. I haven't started at 6:45 so I could do this. Bear with us, everyone. The joys of technology. Yay. Thank you, Dr. Fegley.
No worries.
All right. And it's 7 o'clock, so we're ready to go. And we are, and we are live on YouTube, so we're good. All right. Let me click record. And we've got everything. All right. Welcome, everyone. I apologize for the technical glitches. I said I learned something new every time I go on to Zoom, and unfortunately, it's always with a crowd of people watching me. So our apologies, as there's always a new glitch. It's always interesting. So welcome to another in our series of Parent Chats with the Superintendent. I'm Sandy Claus. I am the Communications and Community Relations Coordinator for the school district. And we are really happy to have you here with us tonight. We've got lots of information to share, and we're going to get started right away. I first would like to introduce the panelists who are here with us this evening. We have Dr. Alan Fegley, our Superintendent of Schools, Dr. Leroy Whitehead, our Assistant Superintendent, Dr. Jessica Kilmetz, our Director of Curriculum, Ms. Blake Emanuel, who is our Board President. And we are going to go through, we have a presentation for you. The most important piece that we want to do tonight is make sure that we're answering your questions. I know a lot of you put questions in ahead of time, and they will either be addressed as part of our presentation tonight, or they will be, we'll try and address them. You also we have a Q&A function at the bottom of the screen. It's at the bottom of my screen. It may be at the top of yours. So you should see a Q&A. You can type your questions in there, and we will be checking those throughout the presentation and trying to answer them as we go along if appropriate. But we're going to save lots of time at the end to answer more questions then. So we are going to try and wrap this up by 8 o'clock. And I think without further ado, I am going to turn it over to Ms. Emanuel to kick us off.
Great, thank you. So yes, please, as questions come to mind, feel free to add them to the Q&A. We will certainly do our best. And we also, afterwards, if there are questions that weren't answered, we do have a lot of information on the website, and we'll update and take that into consideration into information sharing in the future. So with that, thank you for joining us. Thank you for being here. Thank you for taking an interest in this and trying to learn more and trying to help us learn more. I was thinking about the other day, it's almost been a year since this all started. And we've certainly been through a lot and continue to do so. And we're just so thankful to everybody for being involved and helping to ensure that we're meeting the needs of our students and doing everything that we can. So just wanted to thank you all. Dr. Fegley.
Thank you. I had my cheat sheet, but I can't show my cheat sheet right now. Anyway, tonight we have a number of items we would like to cover. We're going to first go over our current recommendations and then all the recommendations moving forward. This will include the rest of the third marking period, fourth marking period, spring sports, summer programs, and upcoming activities. Again, we'll be doing spring athletics and activities. We're going to be talking about next year and some thoughts that we have for next year and the directions we're looking to go. And then, as we've said at the end, we're going to do more Q&A and hopefully have lots of time for you to ask your questions. I'd like to echo President Emanuel's thanks to all of you. We know this has been a very trying time and a very challenging time for all. And we thank you all for your patience. I know it's not easy, and we're doing our very best to try to make it work for everyone as best that we can. So we've recently received updated guidance. Now, this is not unusual. We seem to be getting updated guidance every 2 to 3 weeks. Most recently, we heard that the Pennsylvania Department of Health and PDE gave over the health control of school districts to the Chester County Health Department. This was a request that came in from the Chester County Health Department, the Chester County Intermediate Unit, and the Delaware County Intermediate Unit. So at this time, the Chester County Health Department is overseeing how we open and our various rules and regulations that we follow. We're going to keep working and following the guidance regarding the closing and opening of schools and the classrooms as it's been put out. I will say, as I've said almost every single one of these sessions, it's inevitable that we will receive new guidance at some point in the future. Why do I say that? Is because we're learning new things all the time. The information is changing. We're getting better at what we're doing. Schools are getting better at what they're doing. And as we learn more, we will get revised guidance. So this is the guidance that we're under right now. It could change in the near future, or it could stay this way for quite some time.
So mitigation efforts, we've been maintaining these mitigation efforts for quite some time. And the new CDC and Department of Health guidelines re-emphasized those same mitigation efforts. So frequent hand washing, obviously very important. 6-foot social distancing will continue to be our benchmark that we will utilize. We're going to talk a little bit more about our ventilation systems. We're going to continue that. That continues to be important. Masking, we're going to talk a little bit more about masking and some recommendations that the district is going to be suggesting to folks. But the continuation of masking obviously continues to be extremely important. Cleaning and sanitizing is done routinely in all of our buildings. We're going to continue to do that. That cleaning is always done on a regular basis. And of course, as always, if you're not feeling well, stay home. It's important for parents and to realize that if students or staff are not feeling well, we're asking and encouraging them to stay home, and then possibly we'll talk a little bit more about testing, but if that's necessary.
Dr. Whitehead, if you could just, there were some questions before we got started that we're asking about the ventilation and kind of about some of the capital improvements. If you can just real quickly say, I think we have it later in the presentation as well, but just reiterate what we're doing and that these are the guidelines that we're following.
Absolutely. We've consistently retrofitted all of our filters and our filtration systems, circulation systems to MERV 13 filters, which is the recommended filter for that. We have also increased the capacity and the air exchange in the building, and maximize that. In some instances, close to near 100% air exchange. Many of our buildings already have individual ventilation systems for each room. Any room that is not properly ventilated has been shut down. We're not using it for instructional space or anything at all. We did have back in March, we did have some rooms that were being used for office space, those kinds of things. We're not using any of those rooms now at all. So that ventilation will continue, and we'll continue to make sure that those filters are upgraded as we need to.
Thank you.
Dr. Whitehead, do you have this slide or do I have this slide?
I think it's fine. I'm sorry. Apologies. Testing. Let's talk a little about testing. So we have been very fortunate to form a partnership with CHOP, as well as under the guidelines of the Chester County Department of Health, and I've been helping to coordinate that effort in the district. I'm pleased to say that we've had almost 150 staff members and employees take advantage of that testing. And again, this is the rapid Binax Now rapid antigen testing that we've been rolling out. And special thank you to all those that have been involved with that. It's been a Herculean effort to do this. And we're very pleased to be able to offer this. And we believe that this is another mitigation factor that you'll see in our Swiss cheese model later on in that graph as well. Double masking. Currently right now, the recommendation from CDC, where applicable and where you can, is to double mask using a mask that's that you would purchase anywhere, with a cloth mask over top of it. And again, we're not requiring this, we're just strongly recommending this throughout the district. And a lot of our students and staff I've seen already taking advantage of that recommendation and are double masking. This brings up that level of protection close to an N95 capacity. And so that's what we want to see. So again, with that, and I already mentioned about the MERV 13 filters and increased ventilation.
And it's worth mentioning that with this new double masking recommendation, and while we have certainly been providing masks, we are prepared to provide the additional masks. So folks who don't have that surgical mask, maybe the student comes in with a cloth mask, if they want the surgical mask, we can provide that. And we still do, I believe, correct me if I'm wrong, we still have plenty of cloth masks available. Yep, I'm seeing a lot of nodding heads. Yeah, so plenty of cloth masks as well. So if your student wants to do that double masking, they can certainly, and they're doing the in-person, they can certainly request that additional mask.
Absolutely. So future mitigation steps. Vaccination, that's certainly one that's been talked about a lot. I was on the call with the health department today and in reviewing the CDC guidance. Everyone wants us to have vaccination. There's no doubt about it. They have stated, and we're stating again very clearly, that vaccination is not a requirement for schools to have kids in schools, although it would be nice and for us to all have the vaccinations. We had hoped to have the first round of vaccinations done by the end of January. Unfortunately, as I'm sure you've heard, the supply just is not there. So we are back in the waiting line, just like all the rest of you are, waiting for the vaccine to come through. What I can tell you is that as school districts in Chester County, so this is all school districts in Chester County, we have a plan that once we are told there's a sufficient supply or given the supply, we can, on a weekend, vaccinate up to 5,000 school staff in one weekend. This will actually get, in 2 weekends, all school staff necessary vaccinated in that process. So we're excited that we have those plans in place. We're ready to roll with those plans. We're just simply waiting for the vaccination to arrive.
So Dr. Fagley, there was a question before we got started that a concern about the safety of students and staff with having a lot of people coming in for vaccinations. So what I heard you say was this will all be done on the weekends.
Right now, we have it scheduled for a Friday afternoon after everybody leaves and a Saturday is what we're looking for. So yes, we're not looking at mitigating or integrating the crowds of people or anything like that in any of the sites.
And really quickly, before you move on, there was a quick question. The double masking is a recommendation, not a requirement. I will say at this time, because to Dr. Fagley's point earlier, things are always changing and we don't know what's going to come down the pike, but at this time, recommendation, not requirement.
That is correct. Even in all the guidance we're receiving, they only list it as a recommendation.
Before I get to the Swiss cheese model, I did see one earlier question about vaccinations that Dr. Fagley was talking about. We have had staff members who have been vaccinated. Our school nurses are part of the 1A category, as well as some of our other teachers, special education teachers as well. So we have had some staff members who have participated in that vaccination. That's all question. The Swiss cheese model, this is our famous Swiss cheese model. This comes to us from CHOP as well. And again, the theory, we've explained this to folks before, but again, the theory behind this is you're layering those mitigation efforts. This is one of the reasons, as everyone has heard on national news, that schools throughout the country are fairly safe places in terms of keeping this mitigation, because we are using the Swiss cheese model. So you have masking, and you have the possibility of double masking, the recommendation, again, optional. 6 foot distancing, 10, sometimes as far as 10 feet, if we can get to that, for eating purposes. Reduced occupancy in areas, increasing that ventilation flow, using the proper filtration, hand washing, and regular cleaning and disinfecting, which we do. And then hopefully, as Dr. Fagley mentioned, we'll be adding that layer of testing, which we've already added now. So that's another slice of cheese that's not on this slide, is the testing piece, and then ultimately the vaccination. So every layer of cheese that you add, it's tougher for the COVID to get through, and we're going to continue that.
So Dr. Whitehead, I know there were questions about the spread, maybe now's the time to really talk about it. You said about schools being a safe place. Have we seen a spread in schools when, I know we've had some positive cases. Have we had any spread within the schools?
We have not, and that's one of the good things with people doing what they need to, with staff members and students really doing a good job maintaining social distancing. Using the hybrid scheduling. We know it's tough. It's not what we want. We all love to be in person, but we have seen positive cases, but we have not seen any interbuilding spread, which is really a tribute to the efforts of everyone pitching in.
And I think what's really important is we were not seeing school spread when we had positivity rates above 10% and we had incidence rates above 200, almost 260 per 100,000 in the community and in the Chester County in general. As you'll see on the next slide, we were up at 366 in the community there for a while. And then we came down, Phoenixville came back into session when we were at the 265, 280 level. And now we're down to the 122 level for incidents per 100,000 in Chester County. So we are moving in the right direction. And I'd like to thank everybody for following through, because this is what they're showing here is the community spread. Community spread is what sets the standards for how schools end up operating. Phoenixville community in general has been following the Chester County community by about 2 weeks. So you'll see we had our peak at 284 a little bit later. I'll go back and show you, you had the peaks here, and then we had our peak a little bit later, and then we've been on the downward trend. Phoenixville has also been trending downward a little bit faster than Chester County. Now, when looking at this, because we have staff coming in from all different locations, we will be following the Chester County levels as we're determining whether we're in substantial spread or high spread or moderate spread. But while we're still up in that high area, we are getting close to less than 100 incidents per 100,000, which is a huge marker. I don't have the positivity up here, but if you go out on our website, you can see the positivity rates. The positivity rate for Chester County right now is actually down in the moderate range. That's probably why we're seeing this nice downward trend taking place. Hopefully we will continue to see it. But again, the biggest thing is thank you so much to all who are following through. I know it's difficult not going, seeing friends. I know it's difficult not going out to dinner parties. We're going to restaurants. And I do want us to support our restaurants, but I support them by taking out food. And, I do that so that I help mitigate the spread that takes place. So thank you all for all you're doing. And hopefully with these numbers continuing to decrease, we will be able to move forward in the near future.
Dr. Fegley and Dr. Whitehead, there is a question here. All of this presentation is based on the assumption that schools were unsafe and these mitigations are needed. How is this assumption tested and validated? For example, how is the causation in community spread and schools linked?
That's a great question. What we have been told, and this is other people looking at our data, is that as the community spread goes up, schools tend to follow by about 2 to 3 weeks. And as the community spread goes down, the schools also tend to follow by 2 to 3 weeks, especially when we get up into the high ranges, in the high ranges being above 150, 200, 300. But what they have also told us from the Chester County Health Department is that as schools in general, we don't see the spread happening in schools. So going back to Dr. Whitehead's point about transmission in schools, yes, we've had positive cases come in, but all those cases have been traced back to sources outside the school. And as we trace the cases that do also then occur in the school, none of them have been related. So you may hear in one school that we had 2 positive cases in one day. Well, one's on one floor, one's on another floor. Those 2 folks have never come in contact with each other, and there's been no spread in those classroom areas or those office areas. So that's how we're taking our information, and that's part of the reason why the CDC and others are saying that the schools are a safe place for students and staff to be. I think they also say that though, because as a school, we are we're very diligent in making sure people are following the mitigation protocols that have been put in place. So we point to noses a lot. If the mask is down, we sit there and make sure people readjust their mask. We make sure that people maintain the right distancing as they are sitting, and we also make sure when folks are eating that they're maintaining the proper distancing and facing the same direction so that we have all aerosols going one way versus going and mixing all over the place. So we do a very, very good job, and I'd like to commend the staff and the students and everyone for all that they're doing to try to keeping us safe, not even trying to keep us safe, so far keeping us safe, which is wonderful.
Thank you. And there's just a follow-up question. So being in schools is safer than being out of school. And I just throwing this in there. I think that that is a challenging question to answer insofar as obviously we don't understand what every individual student's home life looks like.
Right.
I think, personally, I would not feel comfortable answering that. Just insofar as we know what we are doing, we know the ways that we are ensuring our compliance with the guidance and recommendations, and that's all we can speak to at the end of the day. We can't speak to what's happening out in the community, and we don't, and what's in individual homes. But I don't know if anybody wants to add anything to that.
Yeah, I would
That's a
just,
very good point. We're not trying to make a statement about what's happening out there. We're just giving what we have been told as the evidence that schools are a good place, so that we're not seeing that transmission take place. And, everyone's going to have to make their decision for themselves as to what they would like to do. There's no doubt about it. If and when we are able to open further, I expect people to make decisions based on what the new guidance is. And some may keep their decision the same. Others may change their decision saying, nope, I'm not comfortable with that. We will keep following and working within the guidance and making sure that we're following all the mitigation factors.
Couple additional follow-up questions. How does PASD compare incidence rates to private schools that are currently open in person 5 days a week?
Unfortunately, the private schools have not released that data, so I do not know. I can tell you from talking with surrounding public schools, Phoenixville is doing very well in our numbers, but I do not know how the private schools are doing. Those numbers are not released to us.
On the same line, why is it the private schools have been open this entire time, but not our public schools?
I can only say that as a public school, we are working to follow the guidance, and that is part of what we're doing. We do that on many things of following the guidance, and we may want to look at it as a way as we receive guidance on many things different times. Some guidance is that we need to make sure that we screen everybody before they come into the building. That was even before the pandemic. We would sit there and do raptors and for the safety of folks, and that we should have cameras. We follow the guidance. I'm not saying that the private schools do not follow the guidance. They need to make their own decisions. As a group in Chester County, we have been working to follow the guidance that we've been provided.
Just to add a tiny bit to that, one of the challenges is the size. We have 42,
It's true.
4,300 students at this point, multiple buildings, and a lot of the privates. Well, I don't know of a local private school that's that large, but there's certainly most of them are much, much smaller. So having smaller class sizes, so if a private school, for example, is maintaining that 6-foot distance, it's a lot easier to do it in a class that started out with 10 students and 1 teacher. Whereas we would be in that 20 to 30 range, depending on the level and the student and the building. So it is a little bit apples to oranges, just insofar as infrastructure alone, the size of the buildings, the number of the students, and ensuring that we maintain that compliance, as Dr. Fagley mentioned.
Good points.
And of course, instruction goes on. Our current instructional model is a choice for families between hybrid instruction or an all virtual instruction. Hybrid, of course, consists of 2 days per week in person, 3 days virtual. And as space allows, we are able to invite in select hybrid students who will be offered the opportunity for 4 days per week of in-person instruction. This decision, of course, it must be based on need and, of course, space, because we are following all the health and safety guidelines that we must across all of our buildings. And so we are a little bit tighter on space at the elementary level than we are at the secondary level, but those invitations are being extended and will continue to be extended, of course, based on need and as space allows. And of course, we also know that some of our students with the greatest learning needs are in 5 days per week if families choose in-person instruction.
Dr. Kilmes, there is a question asked, has consideration been given to bring the 504 students back full time?
Again, all decisions are based on need, yes. So if need and space allow both, then we are extending invitations. But of course, that just depends on individual circumstances. There's not broad groups of students that are all invited in for those 4 days per week in person. We really are basing that on data and individual needs of individual students. For fourth marking period, we'll be reaching out soon for fourth marking period decisions for families, whether or not they choose to attend hybrid or in person. And of course, we'll continue following all the Chester County Health Department guidelines that we've talked about so far, but we can also adapt quickly. So should the guidance change in any way, we can quickly adapt and be flexible in order to bring in more students.
Before we
Some
move
folks
on
have
to
asked, how can we do that? I'd just like to remind everyone, we had plans for bringing all students back last summer at 3-foot distancing. So we still have those plans. We do need to dust them off, and we have been dusting them off to keep looking at them. So again, as the guidance adapts, we as a district will adapt, and our goal is to keep bringing back as many students as we can throughout. And when we say use the word quickly, please understand quickly does not mean the next day. Quickly does mean it's going to take 1 to 2 weeks for us to make the changes, because not only do we have to sit there and bring the students back in, we have to redo bus routes. We have to do lots of different work in order to make sure that we have everyone coming in safely. So quickly for us is 2 weeks, but we could make that change if something happens in that period of time.
And we do have quite a few questions. One was based on the 504 question. So how do you get an invitation? This is a 504 and IEP. Please reach out to your case manager and start that conversation with them. That's how you get the ball rolling on that. There is another question. Are all virtual students considered for the 4-day week invitation based on need, or does a student need to be hybrid to be considered? I will turf that question.
They do not need to be hybrid to be considered. So again, it is based on need and space, and we are reaching out. So even if you've previously chosen virtual, if there is need and space that that's available, we will reach out with an invitation.
Are parents able to request their student need considered for 4-day week for 4-day week in-person instruction, or is it invitation only?
So that depends on the school. At the high school level, you can request that your child attends 4 days per week. Again, that's just based on space. We do have more space at the high school level. We did have some students who had originally selected hybrid for the 3rd marking period, but have changed their minds, or families have changed their minds. And so we do have more space at the high school than we do at the other buildings. At the other buildings, it is really, again, based on need and space, and we will reach out.
Then we have, if our child is virtual now, but we want to send them 4th marking period, can we still do it, or will they be turned away if a 4-day child has taken their spot?
We're going to do our very best to accommodate everybody's request. Again, we feel that we can do that.
I'm going to turf this one to Dr. Whitehead. This goes back to, I want to say mitigation, but have contactless soap dispensers and paper towels been installed in the restrooms, hand dryers would spread germs that are made on hands?
Yes. In fact, all of the air hand dryers that funnel air down have been disconnected. So there are no hand dryers that are functioning. Paper towels is the way to go. So again, you're limiting that germ movement as well.
Thank you. And then next one is, have you been contacting public and private schools who are bringing their students back full time to see what they are doing that we are not?
So we are, as superintendents in Chester County, meeting with schools next week to have further conversations. These are schools that have brought their students back in 5 days per week. From what we have been told, we are trying to find out from them what the distancing is that they are using, and what other factors are playing out within in the cafeterias and other locations. So we have been reaching out. We've been getting information. What we have learned so far is there's some schools that had enough space to bring students back at the 6 foot plus distancing. So those are ones that were able to do it first. We are trying to reach out to some that may have been doing it with less distancing at this point, and we'll have those conversations next week.
And this is the last one up right now. It's the plan for PALC at the end of last summer indicated that there was enough room to bring back all students with 6 foot distancing. Can you speak to why that is not happening at this time? Heard it was a staffing problem. Can you speak to what the staffing problem is? That is indeed the case, and what is being done to address that staffing problem?
Can start answering that question. So that plan was based on sort of those large group virtual learning centers that we had planned for at that time. Again, that would have taken additional staff because students in those virtual learning centers would not have been with their classroom teacher at that time in order for us to maintain the appropriate social distance. So we would have had to use that large group instruction area and have supervision, necessary supervision, of course, for students who were learning virtually in that virtual learning center. I don't know if anybody wants to add to that.
No, I think, yeah, I'm just add, there was also some mitigation challenges, with that large group instruction.
I'd just add one more piece insofar as how hard it is. And there was a teacher shortage before this all started. Just finding staff is hard. It is just in general, it is challenging to find the folks with the qualifications needed who are able to do the job and willing to do the job.
That's very true. I need to give props to Mrs. Rockwood because she has been working really hard at finding the staff that we need. The mitigation piece as we went into it, as Dr. Whitehead quickly talked about, was one of the key factors. We just did not feel that we could keep everybody, given the current guidance we had at that time, safe. That included students and staff. So that was another big factor in there. We were very hopeful. We pushed really, really hard to do that, and it just did not pan out, unfortunately.
Just to add to that too, I think we want to make absolutely sure that the message is coming across that our staff has been amazing and they have stepped up in ways beyond what we ever anticipated. So yeah, this is not that our staff isn't willing or able to do it. They've been fantastic. And as you all know, as parents, with our teachers and our aides, every single individual in the organization, I think, has really stepped up and done an incredible job. So please know we're praising every one of them.
I see another question here about the learning delays that may occur due to this pandemic situation that we're in. And to build on what Mrs. Claus just said, our teachers really are doing an amazing job. We've collected a lot of data recently on individual students, all our individual students, reading data, math data, in some cases, science data. And what we're seeing is that our students are not seeing those great losses, thank goodness. And that's really due to the hard work and effort of our teachers, our principals, our specialists, everybody that helps to support our students. That said, we do recognize that some students, are experiencing struggles and challenges. And again, our teachers are catering to their individual needs. So for small group instruction, for individual instruction, they're looking at data in order to make sound instructional decisions about how to best meet your students and children's needs. And please feel free to reach out to your child's teachers if you feel that there's a need that's not being met. Our teachers are there to help and support you as a family and your students' learning. That is number one priority for all of us. And we really do use that data to individualize instruction.
That's so true, Dr. Kilmetz. And then in a little bit to the audience, we'll be going over some of our plans for the summer, which are very robust and becoming more robust by the week. And we'll be taking forward to the board for formal approval in the next month or so. So we do have some deep plans to help make sure that we catch everybody up, because while some students are doing very, very well, other students are doing okay, some are having challenges, and we do need to work on addressing them. So spring sports, we've been talking about the guidance we've been following so far. In the instructional area, we've been following the guidance of the Chester County Health Department, the Pennsylvania Health Department, are those two main areas that we have been following. In this area of sports, we've been following the guidance from Children's Hospital CHOP Policy Lab. And that policy lab has set the standards for when we can and cannot, or should not be doing sports. It was a great challenge in the wintertime. Sports are indoors. And so we had to put a number of restrictions on the sports then. We continue to learn more. And at this point, while we don't have a formal recommendation, what I can tell you is the Pioneer Athletic Conference, which is what Phoenixville is part of, will start the high school sports March 22nd. We'll begin, yes, we're going to actually start with middle school practices on April 5th. And competition is scheduled to be within the PAC only. That's the Pioneer Athletic Conference. And we're not going to be participating in invitationals or on some of those big events this year, but we are going to have our students, if they qualify, go to districts and go to championships. So we will be doing that. That's part of the Pioneer Athletic Conference plan. It is easier to implement in the springtime because the sports will be outside. I do not see us bringing them. I do see us moving forward with all the sports. We may need to put some requirements on some of the athletes depending on the level of contact, and we'll be discussing those with the pandemic team in the coming weeks and making those decisions and letting folks know what's happening there.
Real quick before we move on, we have a question about, they were hoping for a reminder as to why Wednesdays are not being utilized for in-person instruction.
When we were looking at how to go about doing this best, we found that it was necessary and appropriate to have a virtual day so we could have all the students together working virtually with their instruction. So that was the reasoning behind it. It is something that we are looking at, but right now we are maintaining our virtual Wednesday.
Dr. Figel, I know there were also questions about the early dismissal on the alternate Wednesdays. Can you or Dr. Kilmetz maybe address that, why that's important?
Sure. It is very important. As you've seen, the faculty are working very, very hard. They are working on teaching in-person and virtual students at the same time. They have asked, and we believe it's very appropriate to give them some additional planning time and additional time to work to get caught up and keep caught up with the hard work that they are doing. So that's the reasoning behind it. It is, by doing it this way, we are still maintaining our 900 and 990 minimum hours. So we're maintaining our instructional levels that is required by PDE, but we are also utilizing time in order to allow the faculty to prep and have common planning time so that they can do even better work.
One additional question that did come in on athletics, restrictions to athletes in spring sports, meaning that you'll require athletes of targeted sports forced to go fully virtual.
I'm sorry, I missed some of that, Ms. Emanuel.
I know so what I believe what they are asking is, like fall and winter, are we going to require certain sports to potentially do fully virtual during that season?
It is possible that we will, yes. And that will be depending on review by the pandemic team of the sports. So it is possible, yes. The greater the contact, the greater the possibility.
So we have gotten very creative with our student activities, plays, etc. We know that how important those end of the year activities are for folks, particularly students, and there's a couple of them listed there on the slide. And so we're going to continue to get very creative, whether that's moving some of these type of programs outside where it's safer, limiting food or not having food at all, actually, and most of these kinds of activities and programs. So again, we are going to do our very best to ensure that the students and staff can experience some of these end of the year culminating activities. We realize, you know, how important they are from a mental health standpoint and from a celebratory standpoint. So again, we want to do them safely, and we're going to continue to do that, looking at each activity individually and how we can implement that with mask wearing and social distancing.
It is very important to know we are looking at this incredibly carefully. I am guessing at this point that we may be looking at a 2-3 week period where we have many of the activities together because we may need to look at setting up special tents in other areas in order to make these happen. So we are looking at that. We hope to have a plan rolled out to the board and to the public within the next 2 weeks as to how all these activities will be taking place. But we do know their importance. We do know they need to happen, and we will be making sure they happen this year.
Before Mrs. Emanuel, we do have a couple more questions that if we can,
Sure.
before we get into the food. What academic trend data have you looked at to see the percentage of students whose grades have dropped from this year to last year?
Dr. Kilmetz?
I can answer that. Yeah, we've used all the data that we collect, and we had a very robust data collection window in January. So we do use marking period grades, of course, and we do use the data that we collect from all our benchmark testing, which includes literacy data, math data, and science data in certain instances. And all that data, in most cases, can be compared to previous years. And so in that way, we're really able to look at what some of those trends are, and are we trending, in similar ways to what the nation is seeing as a whole. And we did also discuss that data in great length at a recent board committee meeting of the curriculum committee. But in summary, what we're seeing is that our students are not trending poorly, like some of the nationwide trends that we're seeing. In some cases, we're seeing data that's really comparable to last year. And in some cases, we're seeing data that's a little bit lower, but it varies based on the subject, based on the grade. But we are keeping a very close eye on that. And like I said, our teachers really use that data to drive instruction. So we're not just monitoring it to compare last year to this year, we're really using that data for instructional purposes.
Dr. Kilmetz, just as a follow-up to that, can you speak to how much of the current data collection was done virtually by computer rather than on paper or in person?
It's a great question. So a lot of our benchmarking tools actually were done on computer in years past. The one major exception really being our literacy data that's collected at the elementary level. Previously, that had been a one-on-one student to teacher collection in person. We modified that collection this winter in January so that we could actually do that testing online. So it was still a one-on-one test, teacher student. It just was via Zoom. And so in that way, we were able to collect what we feel is really reliable and really usable data. And we're not the only school district that chose to do this. Other school districts using this assessment made similar adaptations.
We have one more question that I'll get in real quick. Will you be sending out a survey to see how many students would return in full if this becomes available? Have you surveyed how the teachers feel about returning in full? I assume that means 5 days a week.
So assuming that's what it means, no matter what, and as we prepare for next year, we will be sending out a survey that will give multiple options, most likely saying, would you return if it was 5 days full? Would you return if it's 5 days full at 3 feet, distancing? Would you return if it's 5 days full at 5 feet distancing? Just so we get a sense, because there may be folks who are comfortable with it being 5 feet, but not comfortable if the distancing is 3 feet. So those types of surveys will be going out to everybody so we can learn more about where people are feeling, but that won't take place for a little while. We're planning right now for fourth marking period, and we'll get that going once we hit the fourth marking period and are starting to do the more formal last stance, shall we say, planning for the 2021-2022 year. In particular, we're going to need to know if folks, no matter what, are going to stay virtual, because that will affect our plans as to how many teachers we have go and teach full virtual classes, which we'll be getting into in a minute.
So Dr. Kilmetz, one last question. Has the level of instruction, the amount, intensity, or depth kept pace with prior years?
That's a really great question as well. And it is so flexible. It truly depends. So in some cases, the instruction has kept pace pretty much right on point with previous years. In other cases, we have seen teachers spend more time prioritizing certain standards and the instruction around certain standards to make sure that we're really hitting what what should be the priority standards, that's especially important in math. And so we've worked very closely with our math teams to make sure that we're prioritizing appropriately for the rest of the school year as well into next year. Math builds, the skills build on each other. And so to not really think carefully about that prioritization, we'd be remiss if we didn't do that. So we're spending a lot of time doing that for math instruction. For literacy instruction, the curriculum is more cyclical. And so you see repetition of standards. Of course, they do build, that instruction does build on itself from year to year. But because those skills are more cyclical in nature, we see less of a need for that sort of priority standard to be taught.
There's another question, Mrs. Claus, about distancing and whether schools can be fully open at 6 feet or 3 feet, and they'd like to know by school. It's a very simple answer. At 6 feet, none of our schools are able to be fully open with all students. We must be on the hybrid model. At 3 feet, all of our schools can be open for all students 5 days for instruction. So that's that's how it is. At 4 feet, we have some, couple places, or 5 feet, we have some places that aren't going to be able to. But if we know enough in advance, we may be able to schedule the classes in such a way that we will be able to do that. So we do know the capacity of every classroom and how many we can put in there at the various sizings from 3, 4, 5, and 6 feet.
And another question that unfortunately has a non-answer. So the question is about PSSAs. Any information yet? And unfortunately, we don't have a finalized answer yet. So at this time, they are still on. There has been the request that it would have to happen at the federal level, but that waivers be granted so that we would be able to not have to take the PSSAs, but we have not been granted those waivers at this time.
So there is a follow-up question of that. And what if they're not comfortable having their virtual kids come into the building to take PSSAs?
We don't know the full answer to that right now. And I wish we could give an answer, but they are telling us at this point, and correct me if I'm wrong, Dr. Whitehead and Dr. Kilmetz, that all students need to come in to take the PSSAs live. Now, I don't know how that would go with the virtual. So please understand, we don't have an answer for that question either.
Yeah, that is something that, we are concerned about as well, because even if we take the PSSAs online, we're still required to test in person. And it's important to note that those waivers are not ones that we can apply for ourselves. That happens at the state level. So Pennsylvania Department of Education would apply for those waivers on behalf of the state if it was available, and currently it is not.
Okay.
So another question. Why are children not required to have their cameras on?
So this has been a long discussion that we've had, and it boils down to an equity issue. And the equity issue is some of the students are just not comfortable having their cameras on. So if they can engage and are more engaged with their cameras off, it is better that they be engaged that way. What we have found, and our staff and faculty are doing a great job of engaging the students, and because of that, more cameras are coming on, is that when we have students go into breakout rooms and they're with a small group that they feel comfortable with, they're willing to have their camera on more. So we are altering our instruction in order to make that happen. But this is a case of an equity issue for some students in particular.
All right, next up is food. I'll make this brief. As I hope all of you know, we have been doing food distribution on Wednesdays from 11 to 12:30 at our 4 different sites. But one of the things we did starting two weeks ago, we have offered an evening distribution site. So it's at the high school, the parent drop-off loop right across from Washington Field. From 4:30 to 5:30, you can come get for families who are interested in the children's meals. We have breakfast and lunch for 5 days. And for families in need, we continue to have adult meals at no cost. And we also have food to help folks get through the weekend if they are really struggling. So please don't hesitate to come out on either day. But we do offer now that new additional Tuesday evening option. Next up is so important. We know that students, staff, family members, everybody is struggling with this. This is so hard. So we just want to make sure to reiterate that we do have supports and services for our students. So if your child is struggling, reach out to their counselor, reach out to their teacher. If they're receiving special ed services or have a 504, you can reach out to the case manager. We do have a lot of things listed on the website as well. You can look at different resources that are offered, but please don't hesitate to reach out. We do not want anybody to struggle alone. We're here to help. So please reach out to your child's team.
Summer plans. We're really excited about our plans for summer programming, and while they're still evolving over the next few months, we can tell you for sure that at the elementary level, we'll be offering our literacy summer program that we always offer. That's called Stepping Up. And in fact, you may have already received an invitation and link to the registration form for your child at parent-teacher conferences or via email from your child's teacher. That program this year will actually also include math. As we had just talked about, we do realize that there may be increased math needs for our students. And so this summer program, we will be offering math support as well as literacy support during summer Stepping Up. We're excited for that. We also have our English language development summer program at the elementary level, and of course ESY at the elementary level as well. And if your child qualifies for those programs, you will receive an invite for your child. At the middle school level, we will also be offering reading support, math support, the English language development summer program, and ESY as well. Again, we'll reach out with invitations for all of those programs. At the high school level, we'll be offering our usual array of programs, including the Bridge program, which helps students entering some of our math and English classes, among other classes, some AP classes in the fall. We also will be offering credit recovery as always, and we'll be offering our English language development and ESY programs by invitation. And then lastly, plans are evolving for Phoenixville summer. So we do have camps that are scheduled to run. Sports camps will of course be primarily held outdoors, and academic camps will of course follow all of our health and safety guidelines.
And Dr. Comas, I apologize if you said it. So all of the Stepping Up and the literacy programs, are those all in person?
Thank you. I actually didn't say that. So we are offering these programs in person, and in some instances, we can offer a virtual option as well. Depends on the program and the needs of the student, of course. So we'll let you know when you receive that information for those programs. There will be information included in the registration about whether or not we can offer that virtual option. And of course, all our summer programs will be able to follow the health and safety guidelines that we currently follow, or adapt should the guidance change.
Okay, what are some of our plans for the 2021-2022 school year? First, we're looking at two options. One is the full in-person option, 5 days per week for all students who wish to be in person for the 2021-2022 school year. We're also looking at a full virtual instruction option for all grades in the PASD Virtual Academy. This will be for students who want to be virtual for the year. At elementary level, it will be all classes and all subjects. Right now is our plan. At the middle school, it will be all classes and subjects. At the high school, it's going to be the core classes and subjects and many of the electives. We're pretty certain we will not be able to offer all the electives at the high school level, just because we don't believe there will be sufficient enrollment for that, especially when you're looking at a class that typically only has 20 kids in. We just don't see that class will then have 20 being virtual and 20 being in person. So we are looking at the full virtual option. We will be polling parents mid-fourth marking period, if not a little bit earlier, to find out what you're thinking your intentions are now at that time. That will help us in our planning. We will not make that hold you to that plan right at that moment, but we will be asking you in June, probably shortly after school ends, to please start making a decision as to whether you're going to be virtual or in person so that we can properly plan for the 2021-2022 school year. Virtual teachers will only teach virtual students in that class at that time. So we're not looking at doing the hybrid model. If you're in person, unfortunately, we do anticipate that some people will become sick with COVID next year. I don't think it's going to be away. So we are looking at having all students be in person, but for that time period that you may be sick, your child may be sick with COVID, we do want them to stay home. They would join that class remotely that day, but the class would be instructed as an in-person class. They would be there to listen in and learn what's taking place that day. So they would continue their instruction. They would continue with their same teacher. Those are our plans right now. Please know these may change. But I want to let you know where we are at this moment in time. We are hopeful that we will be lower in our positivity rates and lower in our incident rates, and that we will be able to be in. And at that point, maybe we'll have other mitigation factors that will allow us to be in and be even closer as far as the space and confines go. So those are the plans right now. They're all dependent on the guidelines from the Chester County Health Department and the CDC.
So we have several questions here. First one is for next year, if a student chooses virtual, will the classes be taught by the same teacher like it is now?
So when you say taught by the same teacher, what we're looking at is, let's say we have you're in first grade and you want your child to be virtual. What we're looking at right now is we believe that we'll have enough students to run an entire class so that students would all be with one teacher for the entire year. If you're looking at the high school level and you are in algebra, we believe there will be enough students to run 1 or 2 classes fully virtual. So that teacher would be fully virtual for those 2 class periods. And then he or she would teach in person for the other class periods. I'm trying to think if that answered the question or not for the person.
I believe it does.
And if it didn't, they can certainly, I would encourage that person to follow up question it. And while we wait for that, by virtual, does that mean 100% synchronous or asynchronous cyber school?
We are looking at synchronous. Our learning this year has been very clear that the synchronous instruction is working much, much better than the asynchronous. That has been comparison data we've done with surrounding districts and other charter schools that have been asynchronous. Our synchronous instruction is keeping our students up and close, where the asynchronous instruction from what we're seeing is not.
And a kindergarten question. So do we have any data on the size of the incoming class for fall 2021? This individual noticed that the enrollment was lower this year. They were wondering if parents chose not to enroll this year and would enroll next year. And so while I'll certainly turf the first part of that question, for what it's worth, in PA now there is a mandate, kindergarten is required. So they wouldn't have held back like previous years, certainly, and many folks have done this historically where you hold your kid back a year, but now age 6 and kindergarten are mandated in PA. But I will turf the question of incoming kindergarten size for next year.
So we're waiting to find out how many kindergartners are there. We are anticipating that there will be more. And if that is the case, we will be looking at how do we make sure that we have it properly staffed. So, and to the person's point, our kindergarten this year is a little bit smaller. So, we'll have a smaller first grade moving up and we'll have a larger kindergarten potentially following. So we're waiting to see where all those numbers fall and then we'll make those decisions, but we will make sure that we get those staffed properly.
And I think one of the things for folks who may not be aware, you can register your child at any time in the year. So there are plenty of times where we have folks who register the day before school starts. So it is very hard to give any kind of concrete number at this point. Coming back to next year.
Jumping in on that, President Emanuel, if you know somebody who is considering kindergarten next year, please have them come in and register. We are taking registrations now. It's on our website. They can come if they want to the building. We'll have them in a packet. We are doing it all contactlessly right now. So there's folders that we'll give them and then they can complete them, fill them out, but it can also be done totally on the web. But please register now. That would be very, very beneficial for us in our planning.
I should have clarified.
And not waiting till the last
Advocating
day.
for a last minute registration. I was not advocating for that.
Yeah.
Yes.
So just, we are right at the end of our time. So I want to be respectful of what we told people. We have 2 more questions that I think we'll try and get answered. And then I think we are going to try and wrap it up if that's okay with everybody here. So one of the questions is talking about next year, would your choice be final? Did we already answer that? We already answered that. Sorry. Why is O&J open 5 days of
So we haven't decided exactly when the decision would be final, to be fair, but we would start, I believe we'll start asking people at the mid to end of June to make that decision, and probably give them until sometime mid-July to finalize that decision, because we do need time to plan the number of classes and have teachers be properly prepped for the start of the school year.
I think though, so the question really is, if they choose virtual, for hypothetically, if they choose virtual, are they committed to virtual for the entire year? Or, obviously the converse, if they choose in person, are they committed to in-person for the entire year?
That's where we may, yes, I'm going to say yes right now tentatively, but I'm also going to say, if there's space in virtual, we can move somebody to virtual. If there's space in class, we can move somebody there, but it could also go reverse. If we filled up based off the numbers that we have and cannot keep adding more in person, that may be a challenge. So we are looking at that, because we know people do want to be able to change, but we have talked to other surrounding districts, and a number of them made folks make a choice and not allowed them to go back and forth. So we're looking to see how that has worked.
So one last quick one. Has any consideration been given to the original credit classes at the high school for the summer?
Yes.
At the same time, yeah.
Yes, that's it. Answer done.
We are.
And there will be
Right.
credit classes. Yes.
We've done that in the past.
All righty. As we have done for all of the rest of them, I'm going to give each of the, we've answered lots of questions, so we don't have time for an additional question and answer period, but I'm going to ask each of the panelists if you have any final thoughts that you would like to share with the parents who are watching. So I'm going to start with Ms. Emanuel.
Thank you. Just want to reiterate the things we've already said. If your child is struggling, please reach out to their counselors. If there are special education considerations, 504, absolutely contact the team member. We're all here to help. And I just want to thank everybody again for being a part of this. It's very challenging, and we're getting through it together, and just looking forward to moving on and getting back to what we all wish it was. Thank you all.
Awesome. Dr. Kilmetz.
I just want to say that I'm really thankful for this community. I'm really thankful for our families, and of course our teachers and other staff who are working so hard to support our students through this very challenging time that we never thought would be as long as it is. So thank you all for everything that you're doing, and we'll keep doing our best for you.
Dr. Whitehead.
I would echo the thanks, but I also would add that it's not time to let our guard down yet. Circumstances that we've had have been, where I've had some conversations with parents. I let, my son or daughter go over somebody's house, and then pretty soon we had, a positive case. And I think it's really important not to let your guard down at this point. Keep it up. We know it's hard. But I think those rates and that Dr. Fagley showed, it's benefiting. So we need to keep that up. But thank you for everybody's patience.
And I'm just going to say we did tape this, so it will be up on the website. We'll put it out on Phantom TV, and you can also view it. It was on YouTube Live, so you can view it if you want to go back and see any of the questions or whatever part of the presentation. You'll be able to see that. And with that, Dr. Fagley, I will give you the last word.
Thank you very much. I need to also echo my thanks to everyone. Students, you've just been incredible. Staff, you've been amazing in all that you're doing. None of us ever thought this would keep going as long as it has. And unfortunately, it is going to keep on going for a little bit longer until it becomes under more control. So thank you for all that you're doing. Thank you for trying to make the best out of a very, very difficult situation. Thank you for helping us be able to teach in a pandemic. None of us signed up for this. The board had no idea that they were going to have to be medical advisors when they signed up and ran for election. And yet they're being asked to make medical decisions all the time. And it's tough. They're It's not in any of our wheelhouses. Some of us have a doctor in front of our name, but none of us are medical doctors. And we just simply need to follow the guidance and do the very best we can to make sure that we're educating the children to the very best that we can in this crazy world. So thank you very much for everything. I wish everyone the best. And about the only thing I can tell you is I'm sure we'll be hearing some more from folks in the near future as to additional guidance, because it keeps changing as we learn more.
All right. Just, I will add one more thing. We are going to be doing these monthly. So if you, we'll put the next one out for March very soon, and we hope you will join us again next time. So thank you all.
Really quickly, there was the question, school is as planned tomorrow. It's not a 2-hour delay. It is not full
So
virtual.
the question is, are we having what's happening tomorrow?
Yes, it was a question. I just wanted to throw that out there. Response out there.
So I've been looking down at my phone throughout the entire time, because I'm getting reports in on road conditions, and I'm getting reports from other school districts and what's taking place. I believe it's safe for me to say right now that Mrs. Claus will be putting out an announcement in the next half hour or so that all Phoenixville schools will be virtual tomorrow. The weather conditions, they're predicting more snow to come in. The back roads are still icy, and we're worried about the ice and sleet that they're predicting that is scheduled to come in sometime around 5 a.m. at this point. So I do see us all being virtual tomorrow.
All right. So you're saving everybody from hearing me at 5:30 in the morning. That's a good thing.
So yeah, they'll be hearing from you probably in the next 30 minutes.
All right. That works.
So
Okay.
ignore I typed a response and it was inaccurate. So let's just go with what Dr. Begley just said. And for those of you that are watching this in the future.
I did try to show you an upside down smiley face saying, I'm really kind of kidding when I said it's going to be a warming trend. It's actually getting colder.
It's supposed to be 50s next week, I think. Anyway.
All right. Thank you all.
Yeah.
Have a nice evening.
Have a good evening.
Thank
Take care.
you.
All right. Are you going to, you're going